Okay, Senate Appropriations, this is March 13th, and we're taking up S55, and we have the Chair of the Government Operations Committee to present the bill to us. We're getting at our role is, of course, if there's an appropriation, and maybe there was, or maybe there isn't anymore.
There is.
It's 50,000.
Yes.
So what if you would just run through this quickly?
Yeah.
Over the course, I know that you've had a lot of input, the League of Cities and Towns, some small towns were concerned, and you've tried to come up with a bill to accommodate that feedback. So if you could just briefly review it, and then I guess it's the 50,000, it's why it's used.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Ruth Hardy, from the Addison District. S55, as the chair said, has gone through a lot of revisions. So I first want to I'll just briefly tell you what's not in it and what is in it and why we got to where we got to. So we were trying to balance the public's access to public meetings, the meetings of public bodies, which include all state boards and commissions and things like the State Board of Education and the Public Utility Commission and the Green Mountain Care Board and all the big state bodies, plus all the advisory bodies that work for the state, and all the local ones. So select boards, school boards, planning commissions, and then some of the regional ones like the CUDs and the regional planning commissions. So trying to balance the open meeting law for all levels of government was challenging. And during the pandemic, as you know, we made exceptions to open meeting law, allowing them, all these public bodies, to meet fully remotely. And we've twice extended that permission until June 30th of this year. So we either go back completely to what it was previously, or we make some changes. And that's what S55 does, to try to take some of the lessons we learned during COVID about how public bodies can meet. The current law, which is the pre-COVID current law, is that public bodies can meet fully in person, or if they can meet partly remotely, what we now call hybrid, but they have to have a in-person physical location. So that's what previous law was, and Tucker, chime in if I'm getting anything wrong, but and so that's where we would go back to if we went back to it. And so what we heard from a lot of people, a lot of boards was, hey, we really like to meet remotely and we want to be able to continue to meet remotely. However, we also heard from a lot of people who said we really need to have a physical location for most of these boards so people can come, because not everybody has internet, and because especially the press was really interested in making sure that there was a physical location so that they could, confront Bobby Starr in person instead of on Zoom. Your elected officials to be able to talk to them in person. So where we ended up after lots of testimony from many of your towns including a lot of state boards, was we had contemplated requiring hybrid meetings, which would be both remote and in person like we're doing now. But we heard a lot of pushback saying our town doesn't have access to internet. We can't do a hybrid meeting. It's too complicated. We don't have the staff like you do. We don't have the technology. So we backed off on that. And what we ended up with is that state boards, we did two different divisions, state versus local. So state boards, and then advisory versus non-advisory. And advisory boards, non-advisory boards are all boards that have legislative, quasi-judicial, tax, or budget authority. Or they don't have to have all four, but any of those four are non-advisory boards. Everyone else is advisory. So at the state level, many of the things that we can create are advisory. They don't have any of those authorities. They're just telling people what they think. And then at the local level, things like the Energy Commission or the, library committee or whatever, those are almost all advisory. They can have a budget, but they didn't give themselves that budget. The select board gave them that budget. So advisory boards are allowed to meet, in person, remotely, or hybrid fashion. And at all levels of government.
So could I
That's
ask
not-
you,
Yep,
Senator Hardy, so if we're all meeting remotely,
yeah,
would there be a public notice so that,
Yes.
anyone could, like here, anyone can observe, they don't have to be
Yes.
physically present? So would they have access, to,
Yes.
to that board? In other words, even though, they don't have to have that physical presence, it might be all remote, if someone wanted to, like they can on YouTube, come in and observe that meeting.
yes,
That is possible.
yes, that is required, in fact, and Tucker can take you through the more specific language if you want, but they shall use a designated electronic platform that allows the direct access, attendance, and participation of the public, including access by telephone.
So, but if someone doesn't have internet and the meeting is remote, then
So,
they do.
yeah, so I'll get to that in just a second. So then all non-advisory boards at the local level. So the select boards, the school boards, the boards that make the big decisions, they have to, they cannot meet fully remotely. So none of them can meet fully remotely. They have to meet either in person or in hybrid, with,
So how did they meet during the pandemic?
many of them did meet fully remotely, but most of them have gone back to meeting fully in person, the select boards and
But for
school
the
boards.
towns that didn't have internet, as you're talking about, how did they meet during the COVID era? I think it's what,
Oh, so if they didn't have internet, some of them continued to meet in person.
they just came in mass.
They came in mass or maybe they didn't.
So what went wrong? What went wrong during COVID, doing it the way it was done? So we had to justify doing this till.
So the bill doesn't change how select boards were gonna meet. They actually go back to the pre-COVID. What does change is only for the advisory boards. And then for the state level, it just requires that the state level non-advisory boards meet in hybrid like we do. So they, the boards that have real authority at the state level to actually make decisions have to meet in hybrid like the legislature does. But the bill provides the flexibility to the advisory boards to meet remotely if they want. So that's just for those, but for most boards that make the decisions that can levy taxes and create budgets and do all those things, they have to meet either in person or with a physical location. That does not change. And to your point, Senator, about what happens if a body is meeting remotely and you don't have access to the internet, there's a provision in the bill that requires all boards to provide access to somebody if they request it for either in person or remotely, if the board or the body is meeting in the opposite way. So if a body is meeting fully in person and somebody can only come remotely, the body has to provide that access, and it can be via phone if there's not internet. Or if the body is meeting fully remotely and somebody can only come in person, the body would have to give them an in-person location to meet with them. And there's a provision in the bill that would allow for that. The exception is for emergency meetings or for site visits. So there's some boards that go do site visits. Those are really hard to do remotely. So
So what you have now, the League of Cities and Towns, has reviewed and,
yes.
um,
So the league and the VSBA, the School Boards Association, because this would apply to school boards as well. They are supportive of the bill as it is now. we heard from so many towns. I can show you the sort of progression of my emails from like,
No,
please
please.
don't do this to, thank you for doing this. So, but the thing that the reason why the bill came here is
We've
because
got a working group.
we have a working group, because we dealt with a lot of complicated issues related to accessibility and, access to meetings, including town meetings. Town meetings are actually not meetings of public bodies, they are meetings of the people of the town. And in most town meetings, or many of them, there's actual voting that happens from the floor. And so remote voting is not a thing that we're yet comfortable with. We had that battle a little bit last year, as some of you might recall. So we created a working group that would work on how to improve effective, inclusive meetings, regardless of whether they're electronic and per hybrid or in person. Universal design for meetings so that they can better accommodate people with disabilities. So one of the major concerns we were trying to address was access to public meetings for people with disabilities, whether they are physical disabilities or maybe health disabilities. It makes it hard for them to attend in person, or physical disabilities, or lack of transportation or lack of internet. So all of these sort of accessibility issues. And then we also heard from towns that they don't have the technical skills or the technical equipment to do hybrid meetings or to provide remote access. So there's also some work to be done on that. So accessibility, access, and how to improve voter turnout and turnout at these meetings at the local level in particular. So this working group was made up of
No legislators, I'm glad.
no legislators, and it would be staffed and run out of the Secretary of State's office. And we provided $50,000 for them they needed to hire a consultant and to pay for the per diems. So that is the budget part of it. And the Secretary of State's office I think is supportive of the bill as well.
Can you just talk about the event on the
Yes.
recording of the meetings? So it said to the extent feasible, so I just didn't know, I don't know what your,
Are you talking about on page the
this is page 5,
page 5? So
line 11.
okay. So we had a lot of conversation about, all of our meetings are recorded and posted.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of conversation about should we require that of all public meetings to be recorded and posted so people can watch the video afterwards to sort of see the exchange between
Yeah.
Senator Perchlik and Senator Hardy kind of thing, right? What we heard from a lot of towns was we literally don't have the bandwidth to record and
Yeah.
post all these things. Or what if unintentionally somebody forgets to hit play? Are we breaking the law?
Yeah.
Or whatever? So we heard a lot of pushback about requiring recording at all meetings. So what we ended up with is that that for the boards that are non-advisory, we would say to the extent feasible, they should record and post for up to 30 days after the minutes.
So that includes the Town Energy Committee and all the
No, it says except
advisory bodies.
advisory bodies.
And so advisory bodies would be advisory to the select board, for example.
Yeah, so most town committees are advisory to the select board and like school committees, you might have the budget committee of the school board. They're advising the school board, just like, I'm trying to think of good examples at the state level, but
just for that, so for the public body, which is the select board school board, they would have to, or they're still under extent feasible.
yes, is that correct, Tucker? Yes, and we had a lot of conversation about how long they should post it, and what I think we ended up doing was, for a minimum of 30 days following the approval and posting of the official minutes for a meeting. And that's actually just for the state board.
So what about like a zoning thing? And planning commission?
Well, they're making decisions.
The zoning board, to the extent that they're quasi judicial, that I think they would be included under, that they would have to meet in person or with a designated physical location. And the planning commission, I think they're just advisory, that it's the development review board would be quasi judicial, they would have to meet in person.
I've got, yes, I'm just looking at, okay, Senator Weston. And I'm just trying to be sensitive, I know you have, yeah,
Bills. No, go for it.
This is just a policy in the working group in the back. The worry that I heard about the bill early really came from my really small towns.
Yeah,
You know, I've got Belvedere with 350 people. And they
Yeah.
hardly can get enough people to wanna serve on any.
Yeah.
Do that. And they're, where they meet, they don't have internet service. So I heard a lot from them about this. I didn't hear from any of my larger towns.
yeah.
Was there any consideration to say to any of these groups that you had to split at least some membership between small towns and larger places?
For the membership of the working
Yeah,
group,
because I just roughly went through it quickly and looked at it and said, I wanna make sure that when you're doing the League of Cities and Towns, the clerks and that someplace in here, if you're a community of under
Certain number.
a certain number, it's a whole different ballgame for them.
right,
so you're on page 11 of the.
yeah, I'm trying, I
Yeah.
feel like we talked about that, but I'm not sure.
One might hope the two designees from the league would balance out, but,
Well, I don't mean to tell, but just to say to the league, give me somebody from a smaller town.
Yeah, and I mean, the league was in the room a lot, and we heard from a lot of the smaller towns there, I mean, some of the best testimony we got from, was from Guildhall.
Yep.
And they were like, we don't have internet, we can't, and he did zoom into our meeting, the guy from Guildhall, but he was like, it's really unstable, that kind of thing, so we definitely, and the small towns are, I mean, I can't speak for all the small towns, but in the end, they were okay with this bill because it didn't require them to do the hybrid.
I understand.
So-
I just saw this working group going
Yeah.
forward, just someplace in here from a high level
Yeah.
that said, please include, at least as you look at this, have some inclusion,
representation.
representation from a small town.
Yeah, we have a bunch of bills with things that are similar in it, so I'm trying, I know we did in another bill specifically say that, but I don't know that we did in here. I mean, I think the league would probably do that anyway, but if you wanna direct them to, I mean.
I think for those little towns that saw this bill coming through early, and they were all like, how are we gonna do this?
Yeah,
Maybe we can, now that we've raised the issue, the center party could look at,
If you
the
could,
language and.
yeah, I mean, I would be happy to do a floor amendment if that would, yeah,
I'd be happy to help you.
Sure.
However,
and
I just worry, those are the people that most on this bill were.
yeah. I also just wanted to note, in addition to that, you'll note on page 13, there's paragraph E, lines 12 and 13, there's a consultation that the working group shall consult with the press association, communication union districts, and other relevant stakeholders. And as you all know, once you start creating a working group, everybody who has an opinion wants to be on the working group. So at some point, we cut it off and then we started naming people to consult with. The press
Other relevant stakeholders.
Yeah, the press association wanted a seat at the table, the CUDs did, and I will note the CUDs want to be able to meet fully remotely all the time for any reason. And so do a couple towns, including one in my district that's been meeting fully remotely, they want everything only fully remotely all the time. And we do not allow that in this bill for the select board, school board, those kinds of boards. And so, we didn't want to make exceptions, because once you start making an exception for one situation and one board, you make
Why
it
not
million. So we tried to make it very clear, like what the rules, how the rules were divvied up between state and local, advisory and non-advisory.
So the 50,000 is to hire a consultant.
So one of the things we were concerned with, and if you have the time to talk to the Secretary of State's office, was that they have a very small staff. And so we wanted to make sure that they had the resources to be able to staff something of this magnitude. So that's why, and this would include their per diems for the people who are on it. And giving them some money to be able to hire somebody to help write the report and do the legwork.
They don't have an individual over there that could do this.
They probably don't. I mean, I think it would be, like their elections division, I think had 4 people in it.
And right now you can't file your report.
Exactly, so they have a
We
lot.
tried. It just
I did try it, and,
doesn't go. It wouldn't let me, saying it wasn't within the reporting period.
Oh, huh,
And it also shows I didn't report July of last year, even though I have a copy of the report filed June 30th, so, I don't know what the problem is there. Okay, I just wanna be conscious of our,
Yeah.
time, but also Senator Hardy's,
yeah,
ducking out from another.
Yeah.
Committee.
thank you. Also, you'll note that the report is not due till November 1st of 2025. And that was out of deference to the fact that this is an election year and the
Oh.
Secretary of State's office is really busy. So we gave them extra time to do the report. So the $50,000 is really for an 18-month report.
And this is a one time.
It's one time, yeah. So that's the story. Thank you for your consideration, and I'll work on that amendment.
I don't know, we may end up
We'll work
doing
on that.
something, our usual contingent, to,
Yeah, I figured you were gonna do what you usually do and pull it off,
we
but
don't wanna disappoint you.
yeah.
We'll add it to.
But I would hope that you'll keep the working group though.
Oh,
because I think
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
really
Yeah,
important,
so
so.
that's fine.
Perfect.
That's not the issue. It's moving one appropriation ahead of.
Yeah, no, I get that. I figured you would do that. All right, thank you all.
We didn't want to disappoint.
Yeah, no, I love it when I know what to expect.
All right, thanks.
See ya.
So we will do our usual, on the appropriate, somehow we will figure it out. We have our standard language relative to,
pulling out the appropriate.
pulling out the appropriation. I'm sure you can do that. And if you can't, I would delegate it to a colleague. Considering you're under a time pressure. So, all right, thank you very much. And we're on to our next bill then. And then when we get the amendment that would deal with the appropriation, that would allow the hiring of consultant position on it. I imagine, and the per diems. We need our standard language. We don't pay per diems for people that are already getting compensated. We have language that we always put in bills, so that, and I would suggest that most of the people that
Right,
might be on here are like town clerks and stuff. I imagine they're coming and
Part of their
being
job.
part of their job, school boards. I don't know, Vermont Access Network, human rights, et cetera. So I think there might be a couple of people that might get represented, but maybe from a local board and they aren't getting paid. So-
They don't usually get.
No, so we just need that, make sure whoever's gonna draft that includes that language. And Michael, can you, I don't know, I'm assuming Tucker will look at it anyway.
Tucker will, or somebody in the office will, as you're probably aware, every time that we do a bill, Michael Turner, legislative counsel for the record, every time you have that sort of a situation, as you stated, there's standard language to the effect that those who are not already
Yeah,
compensated
that's
by the
exactly
state.
I wanna make sure it's in here, because,
Tucker will deal with that, but I'll
Yeah.
We'll make sure it gets done.
Yeah, okay,
Everybody's gonna be covering for time for obvious reasons.
yeah, I know, we have to
For
have,
good reasons, good reason.
all right, once we get that, amendment, then we can move the bill now. So, now we're on to S 206 and,
So you like me to come up, Madam Chair, to the table?
so once we get the amendment.
Yeah.
And then we're on S 206. And, Michael Churnick is the lead, attorney on this. When I saw this, and actually the reason that it got referred here is to make sure that, and I had this question, what extent does establishing an legal holiday, create, a funding expectation relative to state employees or any other employees or exempt employees. And, so, and I was, told that, that was not, that it did not, do anything, that state employees would actually have to negotiate that as part of their contract. And,
Madam Chair,
so, if you would just, reaffirm that in fact, by making Juneteenth a legal holiday in Vermont, that it does not in any way create an obligation to pay overtime or any other, costs associated relative to, employee compensation.
yes, Madam Chair, again, Michael Churnick, Legislative Counsel, I can very much so confirm. Secretary Blue, came by my office yesterday afternoon and explained to me that he had referred it to this committee and was wondering whether he needed to or not, and I said that a good example of this is the Indigenous Peoples' Day, the former Columbus Day, which has not been, quote, a day off state employees' day since the early 2000s when the arrangement was made to make Martin Luther King's Day a full state holiday. And as I explained to John Bloomer, there's a possibility the VSCA could subsequently negotiate.
But the.
But as of right now, there's nothing. The most that could happen is it might be a governor's proclamation or a group might use a state auditorium in the basement of the pavilion for some event or on the state house lawn. But that would be about all there is. It does not impact because state employees off, be it contractual, be it exempts, be it civil service, be it the classified. That's all negotiated as a provision.
And it wouldn't have any
Title II.
impact on legislative staff?
None, because we look at it as because the state house is open, it's a normal working day. As I said, there might be a governor's proclamation, there may be a ceremony on the front lawn or in the well. But we have those all the time, and there might be a ceremony in the auditorium. But there won't be any state employees off on account of it or anything of that nature. The state house doesn't close, state buildings don't
Oh, what
close.
we're really concerned would be, like corrections where you have 24/7 if you're paying overtime, et cetera. That.
They had not moved because it's not a negotiated holiday.
No, that's the reason.
Yeah, I understood that, and to reassure you now, but with that caveat, as I explained to Secretary Mooney yesterday, the VSCA subsequently might decide, and Secretary Bloom said that's a contingent situation, but right now, it's not part of their contract.
Well, they could try.
They could
but it-
try.
But it doesn't mean necessarily that
They would get
succeed.
Right, but what I'm saying, it's full disclosure, it's a possibility. And I would also say that exempt employees such as state house staff as myself, our definition of the legal day off as a state holiday is based on the contract, even though we are not under the contract.
Senator
Yeah.
Speaks.
My question, aren't there more than, I thought there were more than 13, 12, correct?
That's the current list, Senator, and this would just add,
Is this the 12 holidays that are days that the state recognizes?
Yes, right now.
For
and they're
days off?
different, right, no, not necessarily the days off, they're days that are recognized as quote state holidays in the statute,
Which,
and
other than town meeting day, are there any that are not?
town meeting day, state employees.
Indigenous People Day.
Are there any
Indigenous
of these-
Peoples' Day,
are- Question is, sorry, are there any of those days that are listed that are not holidays?
In terms of state employees,
In terms
yes,
of
it
state
is
employees.
People's Day. In October.
Bennington Battle Day is not being changed, it's a state holiday.
Bennington Battle Day
Opposite.
cannot be changed.
I thought the state employees had Indigenous Peoples' Day.
No, they do not. That was part of the deal with Canada.
Federal government does, right?
It does, but for example, Juneteenth is also a federal holiday. And it's not a day off because because a holiday is a federal holiday does not automatically make it a state holiday, or even if it is a state holiday because it's a federal holiday, does not automatically give state as opposed to federal employees the day off. That has to be negotiated between the VSEA and the administration of the day.
So we told former Senator Lucy that we were going to negotiate, Christmas Day. As a separation of church and state, we thought probably we should take that off as a paid holiday.
And we never celebrate two things on the same day.
No, well, yes, President's Day, it used to be we had both Lincoln and Washington, but they got combined, but
And
years ago.
lumped them together.
So,
Maybe we could lump.
so the only thing we're doing here is just adding
You wanna lump
number, line 19 and number 6 is June teens to get it in chronological order. And so adding legal holiday. Before we knew that you drafted this, actually contacted Damien. And he said exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
that it would have to be a topic of negotiation.
Exactly.
So we've heard it from 3 different sources, I guess, at this point.
And I can give you full assurance as can Damien that it would only occur as an additional appropriation if there were a successful contract negotiation in the future.
So I think it's straightforward. Do we want a motion to move the bill favorably
As amended,
as amended?
well, if you're changing your motion, isn't that?
No, that's the bill.
That's the bill, okay.
All right.
We are not
That's
amending
the,
anything.
that's the underlying bill.
Okay. All right.
We're not amending
Sorry.
anything
Yeah.
in this case.
As received.
Okay. Madam Clerk is moving the bill favorably. Do I have a second?
Sure. Alternate line.
And then our ever efficient clerk will start clerking.
Ruth isn't here, Senator Lyons,
Senator Lyons?
yes. Senator Birchler,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Thinking about voting on this, because you could, did you go on to other?
Senator Garrett.
Yeah, I'll vote for it, but I'd feel better if it was lumped in with one of the other days.
Senator Lawrence, yes, Senator Kitchell,
Yeah.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
and the reporter is Senator Starr.
Yeah.
I can report it, because I did the research on it.
Yeah.
It's hard to say,
Money.
they don't want money. There's no money in it. There's no money in it. Money.
No money.
Well, I had to get it.
They thought it might have money.
They thought it might have, but potential. But it's like anything, it has to be negotiated, so we could have a lot of potential items negotiated. So we've finished our agenda for today. Isn't it nice? And it's not